Welcome back. Today I'm going to take a look at two correspondence games that I played against one of you, my subscribers. And the reason that there's two of them is that because the subscriber sent me a challenge for one of these and I accepted. And then right after that, I went into the correspondence pool or whatever it's called on Lichess for a random pairing. And apparently that same subscriber had done the same thing and we ended up paired together because our parameters were close enough. So we ended up playing two games at the same time over the course of, I guess, a couple of weeks. And I had the white pieces in both games. Hopefully we'll be able to learn something from these. If you're new to my channel, I'm not a titled player or a chess coach. I'm just a random person trying to get better at chess. And one way that I've been told you can get better at chess is by analyzing games, whether you won or lost. In this case, I won this game by checkmate here. And I knew I had been ahead for a little while, but it looks like I made two major blunders near the end and gave away my entire advantage completely. Although it does look like I was never really behind except just very slightly in the opening. This mistake or blunder here took me from +3 down to plus 0.8, but I don't know if I should look at every single one or just these here where I completely gave away the advantage. Looks like 1 right here took us to even, 2 and 3. And I suppose we should also look at the, the ones where my opponent gave me the advantage. So let's go right here. Now here we're about even, and my opponent played knight to e5 check, which doesn't seem horrible, does it? I mean, if I take with the bishop, they're going to take back, and if I don't take, then what, I just move over and... Oh, I'm guessing they should have taken the bishop first. That's probably what my opponent should have done right here. No, I was wrong, just as my opponent was wrong. The engine suggests a5 is the best move, and I would take it, creating a passed pawn for myself, but they would take that, so they would have a passed pawn here. Well, then why would I take? Oh, I guess I would take because if I don't take, they're just going to keep going. So that's their best move. I take, they take. And then they can't move their pawn because my knight's guarding that square. But why wouldn't they take the bishop? How bad would it have been if they had just taken the bishop? Okay, it would have bumped the advantage up a little bit for me, but not too much. Of course, I would have taken, and then it says they would have started bringing their king. But that wouldn't have been as bad as what they played. What they played was dropping this knight back here, and I didn't take advantage of it correctly. I just moved out of check. Should I have taken? I left the lines on, and I, automatically looked up there, instead of trying to figure it out for myself. Honestly, I don't know why I didn't take here. It would have separated their pawns, and then I guess I could have gotten in front of that pawn with my king and captured it here before too long. But yeah, it looks like my only move here was to capture, and I didn't. I played my second best move, which was king to e4. Okay, well, let's say that I had captured. They would have taken back, and then, okay, king to e4, then go to king to e4 to be in front of the pawn here. And it looks like no matter what they play, I'm going to get that pawn, because they can't defend it. They can check me again, but that's not a good place to check. They could check me over here, but either way, I'm going to get this pawn. That's what I guess I failed to see here in this position, was that I was going to be able to get that pawn no matter what. I understand that. Unlike many of the blunders in my previous video, in which I analyzed 4 rapid games from Lichess, I think the only thing I learned from that is that I can find moves better than Stockfish sometimes. There was a particular move in that game where Stockfish kept recommending h4 and a4 and I think d3, but I played knight to f3 and Stockfish rated that as better than it had rated its own moves. And even after I backed up, it still suggested those other moves instead of the move I played. It was saying +2, but then when I played my move, it's +2.1. That was weird. I was really frustrated by that video. But anyway, I do understand this because I get the pawn as well. I don't know how that puts me up +4. But this isn't good because they can check on g5 and I would come forward again. I think maybe the reason I came forward is to put myself in position to take this pawn once we did the trade. But they don't have to give me a chance to trade. They can go ahead and take the bishop now. It's not their best move, but that's what they did. Honestly, at the time, it seemed like a smart move on their part because I have to take with the king and keep my pawns together. See, I thought I was creating a passed pawn here. I don't have any passed pawns in this position until I take this knight. But for some reason, I had to take with my king. Wait, if I take... Okay, I know why I didn't take with the king because I thought they were going to jump in here and check and then they would win that pawn. But it says no. It says if I go here, they're definitely not going to play that. Why not? Why would they not play that? Oh, because I get to that pawn. But they're going to get this one. And then I'm just going to keep going over here. Wow, that king got over there pretty quickly. Okay. Normally don't think of kings as being able to, to get across the board as quick as knights can. But in this case, it felt like it. So I should have taken with the king. And I would have been 3 moves from taking that pawn. And they would have been 2 moves from taking this pawn. Okay. Well, like I said, I thought, I'm pretty sure that's what I thought, that if I took with the king, they would check me there and then win this pawn. And if I take with my pawn, I have a passed pawn. But that's inaccurate. Okay. But we got built up here a few moves later to this point. As you can see, they did end up getting my h2 pawn, and I ended up getting that pawn, and my passed pawn is passed. And also, look where my king is. My king is guarding a bunch of squares that pawn needs to pass through. I thought it was my best move to move this pawn, and if they try to come closer to guard the promotion square, I can just move my king up, and then from there, of course, my king will be guarding, all of the squares that the pawn needs to pass through. So I was correct here to play d5. My opponents got two different moves that Stockfish can't decide between, but knight to f3 was one of them, and they played that. I'm up +4. Wait, I just explained my motivation for moving this pawn, but instead I took this pawn. Oh, the reason that I didn't move my king forward is because they hadn't moved their king to guard these squares. So I thought, why not create another passed pawn? But that's a blunder. It says I should have just kept pushing this one. Or played king to c7 now. Either way, it says they would have put their knight on e5. Of course, if I pushed the pawn and they put their knight on e5, that would be check. But if I moved my king and they played knight to e5, then I would push the pawn. Okay, in fact, it says that those first three moves are all the same, no matter what order I do mine in. So if I move the king and they go here, then I move the pawn. But if I move the pawn and they go here, then I move the king. So we're going to end up in those positions anyway. And then they're going to play king to e6 to get beside the pawn, and I'm going to play knight to c5 check. That's both lines. The only difference is which order I play these two moves in. I do understand that if you have a passed pawn, one of the points of having it is to push it forward toward promotion. I guess I just got worried that they were going to be able to stop it somehow, whether by checking me and then sacrificing the knight forward or whatever, and because they had made no move with their king to come after my pawn. I just went ahead to create another one which is currently defended. But that's a blunder because they can play h5 or g5. Okay. They don't technically have a passed pawn, but they can create one. And the engine is saying whichever one they play now, they'll play the other one on the next turn. Okay, so that's their next two turns here according to Stockfish. And either way, whichever one of those they play, I'm going to play king to c5. Well, that is what I played on my next turn. The reason being, to get out of the way of this passed pawn, which I don't think they can get to. And if they do get their king in front of it, then I can push the other one. But we're even if they play one of those two. Because when I play king to c5, they're going to play the other one. And I'm going to play b5, and they're going to play h4, and I'm going to need to take it. And they're going to take, and they're going to have a passed pawn that's as close as mine. That's the problem with me not pushing my d-pawn earlier. I understand that. But my opponent didn't play h5 or g5. They played king to e7, I assume hoping to get in front of this pawn. And that's a blunder because king to c5. Well, as I said, that's what I played. I could have also played king to c6. I think the reason I didn't play king to c6 is because of how easy it would be for them to check me, and it definitely says they would check me. But then I would just go to c7, which is where I wanted to be anyway. So how is that much worse for me? I don't know, but that's why I played here, so they couldn't check me, and so I can move this b-pawn. Their best move, just like earlier, is knight to e5. This time they played it, and I had to push my b-pawn here, not my d-pawn. Okay, this is my last blunder. And so far, I think I have understood the others, but let's see if I can understand this one. Again, I left the lines on so we can see that I should have played b5. I thought playing d6 was fine because it's a check. I thought, if they get in front of it, then I push this one. And then what are they going to do? Try to get in front of that one too? I've got both pawns coming. Also, pretty easily, I can get the knight back here and guard both promotion squares. What I can't do is move my king forward between them because of the knight. So this is bad. Because they can play king to e6. Wait, why would they do that? Because I can't get up there now because of where their knight is. Okay, I think I do understand that. Because when I played this, all they had to do was get beside it, but my opponent, this is the blunder that lost them the game, they got in front of it, which is what I thought they were going to do. Now here I have another only move, and it's not to move b5. That move takes us back to drawn, and I think the reason is, as I said before, I can't get my king in between here anymore. So I can't guard both pawns on the way down, so I go this way, which leaves a spot for my knight to check them, and then they have to move. And then the knight is guarding the next square for the pawn to go forward. That's why I moved over here, is because I knew the knight could check them. They have to move. They can't go here or here because of my king. They can't go here or here because of the pawn, and they can't stay there because of the knight. So they would have to go back. And then, of course, like I said, the knight is guarding d7. That's not exactly what it says would happen. Oh, because it thinks they would have moved their king after I moved my king. Okay, well, I did play my best move here, and a second ago the engine was saying that they would have dropped back to c8, but now it says they should go back to e8, or play h5. Well, I suppose h5 and g5 are still good for the reasons that they were earlier. My opponent did not find h5, but they found g5, probably thinking the same thing as before, and it looks like the rating is about the same. Well, I did what I said I was going to do, which is my best move, which is probably why the engine was saying they should have gone back. Because again, my king is guarding all of these squares, the knight's hitting there, and the pawn's hitting those two. So they only have so many choices. Looks like c8 and d8 are about the same, and they dropped back, which allows me to push b5. Again, because the pawn and the knight are guarding all of those squares, so I can push this. It says king to e6 is my best move. But it's another one of those where it doesn't say what I should expect after it. See, I don't like those. Those are, it thinks they're going to resign. Well, I'm playing an opponent at my level who probably should never resign. Because I'm not up any material here. My opponent definitely shouldn't resign, but the engine thinks the opponent's not going to play anything after that. Okay, well, the next one is b5, which is what I played. And it doesn't matter whether they try the h5 thing now or just move over to try to get in front of the pawn. It's plus 35 either way. They did move over trying to get in front of the pawn, and I'm surprised I found my best move here. It says, oh, b6 would have been fine, but king to e6 is better. And the reason that I thought of that is because since I couldn't get my king down here like I wanted to earlier to help guide this pawn down, maybe I can do it from this side. If they come back to get in front of that pawn, then I march over here. So anyway, I'm glad I found that. I did, and they're supposed to play g4 now. So that's different than what the engine was recommending earlier, or it says just h6. Okay, I think my opponent thought they had to stop this pawn because what they played was knight to d7, which looks like it just gives up a knight. But I mean, they're in bad shape even if they play their best move. It's so close to a mating sequence that Stockfish is confident it can find one soon. And if I let this run a little deeper than depth 35, it would probably find a mating sequence. But I'm not sure. I think the only reason they would have played that is they thought they had to. But that's a mistake and gives us a mate in, well, it said mate in 10 for a second. Apparently the engine has now found some other defenses, so it's mate in 24. But I am definitely supposed to take it, and I did. Whoop, we went from mate in 24 to mate in 8. All right, let's back up. Is it still going to say 24? Because it said 10 when I first got there. Oh, okay. I'm going to try not to be distracted by that. But anyway, after I take, it's a mate in 8, and it looks like I did it in about 8 moves. I have to be careful here. They don't have a lot of choices because my pawn's guarding this, my king's guarding this, my knight's guarding that. I mean, their king only has 2 choices here. They could always push pawns. But I've still got to get this knight out of the way so I can push this pawn. But anyway, that's just fascinating that right here, we were even if they had come forward. See, I never would have guessed that. I think it's because they're still guarding that square and their knight's guarding that square, so I can't push this pawn. If they had played this, could have checked them, or I could have pushed my b pawn. Oh, the other problem here for me is that they can put their knight over here on f7, and it doesn't matter what I do with that pawn, they're going to get it. There's a couple of different orders we could go in here, but basically, yeah, they're going to be able to play knight to f7, and I can't protect that pawn. But again, that's if they had played king to e6 instead of getting in front of it. But again, I assumed they were going to get in front of it, and they did. And I had no idea that I had given away my advantage twice, or that I had an advantage. I wasn't sure I had an advantage here. The only thing that would have indicated to me that I have an advantage is how far advanced these pawns are and the fact that they're both passed pawns. But if they start moving these, I don't know that I can get to them. But anyway, that one was pretty tricky. I think I did understand most of the blunders and mistakes there in this latter half of the game. I mean, good job to my opponent. They kept, got me all the way to move 40 before, I started thinking I might be ahead. Let's look at the other game. In this game, I also won by checkmate. As I said, I had white pieces in both games. And this one looks a lot more straightforward than the other one. Oh, I didn't have any mistakes or blunders. Very good. Good job to me. That doesn't happen very often, and I feel perfectly justified in being proud of that when it does happen. I had 2 inaccuracies. It looked like one was right here in the normal place where I always lose the advantages coming out of the opening. As we get into the middle game, I often don't know what to do, and so we dipped down there. But that looks like where my opponent made 2 mistakes immediately. Let's see where their mistakes were. Yeah, 2 of them were right there after my inaccuracy, and then one was near the end. Okay, well, let's go to this point right here. My 2 inaccuracies, okay, one was coming out of the opening and the other one was a little later and didn't matter. The only one that matters is right here. My opponent looks like they're making a play for the center here, or keeping me from coming forward maybe. This felt like a really weird structure to me, but I don't know if that's good or not. According to the engine, it's good, and my opponent's is good as well. Normally in the English, I don't end up with both bishops here. I often try to get that one over there, but the light squared bishop, I'm used to fianchettoing, and I wasn't sure about castling because they have 3 advanced pawns here. They may not want to move them, but they have them. And they're all defended because, the bishop's hitting one of them and pawns are defending the other one, so it looks like basically everything in this position is defended. So what I did play here was d4, and that was an inaccuracy. To keep my advantage, I had something else. Was it just putting my queen up here? The engine often tells me to put my queen here, but sometimes it tells me to put it here and the other ones would be a mistake. It almost never says either one of them is good. It usually says, oh no, it has to be d2 or it has to be c2 or sometimes b3. I can't go to b3 here, but maybe it's putting my queen up. I don't know. Maybe it's bringing the rook over because very often the engine says move your rook over, but if I put it on b1, it'll say no, it should have been on c1 and vice versa. Sometimes it wants me to put my queen up and then bring the rook over this way. Or maybe I should have castled in front of all those pawns. I have no idea. I don't see anything that's obvious. What is it? Well, I saw castling pop in there for just 1 second, but yeah, it's saying d2 or h4. Well, I'm not going to play h4 here, so let's not count that. I have opponents that play h4 and h5 all the time, but I still haven't figured out when it's good and when it's not. And if I had played it here, that would have meant I was desperate and I thought I was lost. But d2, definitely not c2. Well, actually, it doesn't say not c2, but d2 is the one that's recommended. And then h4 would be my next turn. And if I played h4 now, it says they wouldn't take it, and then I would put my queen on d2. I mean, maybe they wouldn't take it. Maybe they would push, because that's what a ton of people at my rating level will do. When you challenge one of those pawns, they'll push, hoping to get one of those locked up pawn structures that nobody can break through. Yeah, I guess they probably would not want to take because of where their king is, but why wouldn't they want to push it? It's as if I played this, they would play knight b to d7. Or knight to a6 even. Okay, I get knight to a6, I guess, and come in this way. And we have another line where it only lists one move and doesn't say what I would do after that. And it says if they did play knight b to d7, then I would take their g-pawn. They would take back, and then I would play queen to d2. Well, that's if I had played h4, which, as I said, I wouldn't. But I probably would have picked c2. I don't know why, but d2 is better. But yeah, the rest of the line is the same. Whether I play h4 or d2, it says it's going to end up the same. Okay, well, this one I don't understand. Here I played d4, as I said, thinking, if they take me, I can take back with my knight or my queen. And if they don't take me, I can take them. But it says they should push. Oh, well, that's what I thought would happen over here. And it said they would not push. But here they should, because of all the pieces they have defending it. They have the knight and the pawn defending e4, so it doesn't matter that I have 2 pieces pointed there. They would play e4 and I would castle. I probably would not castle with this pawn pointed right in here. And then they would play knight to a6, or they could play knight to a6 now, it says. But again, it doesn't say what I would do after that. If they played knight to a6 now, I was going to take this pawn. And if they took back, I was going to trade queens. Yes, that would give them a rook on the open file, but I could put my rook over here and we could just get rid of those rooks too. But if my opponent had pushed, they would have been fine. But instead they captured. We're almost at +1, and I can take back with either the knight or the queen, and for a second there, I swear that I saw it said I could take with the pawn too, but the knight is best. I wasn't sure that the knight was best, but I also thought, they might want to shove a pawn forward or something like that. So I think I just kind of got lucky choosing which piece to take with here. I didn't want to take with the pawn yet because my king is still here. So I took with the knight, and again, they're supposed to play knight to a6 or queen to e8. Oh, the queen move disappeared. Bishop to d7 is the other one, but knight to a6 keeps showing up. I'm really not sure why. I do notice that people who teach us chess say don't put your knights on the edges, but Stockfish kind of likes doing it sometimes. But my opponent played one of the possible moves that I thought they were going to play, especially if I had taken with my queen, which was to push this forward. But that's a mistake because I can play knight d to b5. Not this knight, not the c knight for some reason. Oh yeah, because they would take that one. That looks like it's targeting this pawn because my queen would be pointed at it too now that the knight's out of the way. So I did play that. I thought I can get a free pawn here, whichever piece I take with. But yeah, those were my opponent's, 2 of my opponent's 3 mistakes were right there. And then I was ahead at least this much for the rest of the game, looks like. They were supposed to play knight to c6, and then it says I would play h4. No matter what they played, it says I'm going to play h4 next. Okay, well, they played a6, and now I am supposed to take the pawn. But see, now that's my only good move. But if they had played knight to c6, it would not have been a good move to take this pawn for some reason. I should have played h4. But because they played a6, it's my only move. Well, I certainly did not know that it was my only move when I played it. In fact, I remember really hesitating about whether or not to take with the queen. Because that's not even up there. That would have been a huge blunder. But I thought I would get the pawn, and if they took, which I assumed that they would, and I took back, I would be doing okay. Wait, nope. I just figured it out. I think if I took with the queen, and they took back, and I took with the knight doesn't have anywhere to go. The knight can't retreat. Once the knight's in here, it can't come back here. It can't go back there because of that pawn. Can't go over there because of the bishop. Oh, I guess it could take the bishop. Yeah, that's not a problem. Well, it's been a week or two since we played, this move, so I don't remember what I used to decide whether I should take with the knight or the queen. I do remember hesitating and trying to figure it out, but I did the right thing, and they did the right thing. And even though I was really hesitant about all these pawns, I did go ahead and castle, and that's my best move. I honestly was very worried that this was a mistake, but I wanted to get another rook out here into the game. I knew they were going to be coming for this knight, and I wasn't sure what I could do about it. They did come for the knight. It's still defended right now, but they're going to be able to add another attacker to it. Probably, like whether it's bringing the rook over, which is kind of what I thought might happen soon. But I had already determined that I could just trade it off for the bishop. Even though the bishop hasn't moved, this knight has served its purpose, and now it's going to get in the way. That's why I don't want to leave it there, because again, they can pin it with the rook, which points at my queen, and we've already, talked about how the knight can't go back because of all those pawns. So I had already decided I was probably going to take the bishop. So that turned out to be good. They get another rook into the game. And since I have so many pieces defending that square, and my knight from there can attack their queen, I thought that was a good idea. I, again, had no idea it was my best move. Well, I'm glad I played one of you in this game and not a random stranger who possibly would have thought I was cheating at some point, because so many of these moves I wasn't sure what to do. This one just looked like a good idea. It's like, it's a good place for the knight. I thought they would probably take with their knight. Stockfish says they would not, but they would probably take with their knight, and then I would have a bishop in here with check. And the bishop would be protected by the pawn, and there's no other pawns that can come for it. And they don't have a light squared bishop, so they would have to use their other knight to fight that off. So anyway, yeah, glad I was playing one of you who knows me enough to know that, I wasn't cheating, but a stranger definitely might have thought that. They did take with the knight, and I was supposed to check with the queen. Okay, well, here I clearly wasn't looking at an engine because I did what I thought. Even a minute ago, that's what I thought would have been my best move, but no, it says I should check with the queen. I don't know about that. Also, of course, when I moved this knight out of the way, our bishops are now facing each other. So after I take this with check and they move out, I'm going to take their bishop with check, which I did. And they should have taken back with their queen, but they took back with their king. And again, I found my best move. Sorry, I was going to quit looking at this game after, it got to the point where it was basically decided. It was decided by that one pawn, by the way, C2 or E2, but I chose the right one. That's rare for me. I will say that one of the reasons that I chose this is because I wanted to get the rook out of the way, and I wanted to be able to put my queen on this diagonal, so it wouldn't have really mattered which one of those D2, C2, E2 squares that I chose. I still would have been able to move over, to the B2, which would be the check. Of course, it can, choose either one of these squares to check from, and also allows the rook out. So I went there, and my opponent immediately came after my queen. Their best move is supposed to be bringing this rook over here. I don't know exactly why, but they went after the queen and the bishop. Okay, I was right here too. I get out of this by checking on one of these two squares that I had just talked about on that diagonal, and then I can move the bishop if I want to save it. So I checked, they get the king out of check, and then I get that bishop out of the fork. So I felt pretty good here, but again, did not know I was ahead. I thought I was doing okay. This turned out to be a liability for them, having all those pawns so far forward, so their king, is doing a lot of running around over here. But yeah, I had no idea I had been ahead this whole time. Okay, thank you for the 2 games. I should probably feel a little bit more proud of this one because I had no blunders or mistakes according to the thing, and I made the best move several times. But I think several of those times when I made the best move, I made them for the wrong reasons. I was seeing something that the engine wasn't seeing some of the time. In the other game, that end game was pretty complex, and I'm proud of my opponent for taking me that far into it. Let's do it again sometime, but next time don't immediately do a random challenge afterwards, just in case I'm doing it, and then we end up getting paired with 2 games in a row. For everyone who's watching, thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.